How's it going? Say hey, brother. How's it going?
Who starts?
Stuff here. De Blasio.
Who was supposed to start?
That way, I thought you did the batting orders.
You.
Oh, I start. That's right. I'm thinking. I thought I put myself second in my mind since then.
No.
I can do this.
Luckily, we rehearsed it 3 times.
How many Democrats does it take to?
Depends who.
That's right. Exactly.
Sometimes one.
Good morning, everybody. We up here are having a really good time because this is an extraordinary day for New York, and it's an incredibly beautiful day. We all feel blessed today to be able to share this extraordinary progress with the people of New York. I'm going to talk about everyone, but just want to, of course, thank Governor Cuomo, Senator Schumer, Secretary Donovan, and Zia Khan of the Rockefeller Foundation, all standing with me for the extraordinary work everyone has done together. And I'd like to remind everyone at the outset, Governor Cuomo and I talked about this on Staten Island the other day. This is an instance of different levels of government and people who play different roles, some legislative, some executive branch, but everyone coming together in common cause to address what we learned from Sandy and make sure we are ready for the future. And it's an extraordinary group effort that has led to this day. So many wonderful elected officials and community leaders are with us, too numerous to name, so I thank you all for being a part of this today. The issue before us is resiliency, protecting our city, our state, against an ever-changing climate. And in that instance, we think about the technical ramifications, the budgetary ramifications, the technological challenges, but first let's think about this in human terms, because we're here in a part of Manhattan that was hit very hard by Sandy. It's one of many parts of the city that was hit hard. And for people who experienced those days, those weeks in many cases, it was a time of incredible uncertainty, a lot of suffering, and it was a reminder of how people felt left without the help they needed and facing an uncertain future and facing the possibility it could happen again. So let's put this in very human terms. With us today is a woman named Melba Torres. Melba, are you here? Melba, right over there. Thank you, Melba. Thank you so much for being with us today. Melba lives in the walled houses very close to here. And she is beloved there in the walled houses. We heard about her story. She's lived on the Lower East Side for her entire life. Melba happens to have cerebral palsy. She uses a 500-pound motorized wheelchair to get around. When Sandy hit, the power went out, the elevators stopped. It was a time of incredible challenge for Melba and so many other people who happen to have disabilities who were in buildings all over this city. She was trapped in her 8th floor apartment. She was there for 6 days and could not get out. But you know what? Because Melba is who she is and she has a personality that attracts such loyalty from those around her, the aides who had been working with her moved heaven and earth to get to her, no matter what they had to go through. One walked across the Brooklyn Bridge to get to her. The aides and her fellow residents made sure that she was taken care of in those difficult moments. So that's one story, one of thousands and thousands of stories that it's all of our job to make sure don't happen again. And you're going to see today the steps being taken to make sure that the flooding doesn't happen again, to make sure in coordination with so many other actions taken with the help of HUD, with the Housing Authority, with FEMA, with so many other agencies, with the state, so many other actions to make sure generators are placed beyond the reach of potential flood waters, to make sure all of our buildings are more resilient and prepared. But the beauty of this project is we are working to ensure that we fight against the floodwaters before they happen with real protections for people of the east side of Manhattan. Thousands and thousands of people, tens of thousands of people in public housing and private buildings alike. And as these projects move forward, people like Melba are going to know they have the security they deserve going forward. This is for all of us, and there's been, again, an extraordinary partnership here. part of a much bigger effort. The City of New York alone, a $3.7 billion overall plan to protect neighborhoods all over the 5 boroughs. We're making great progress in the Rockaways already. Plan for up to 3.5 million cubic yards of sand right away for protection of the Rockaways now, working with the Army Corps. There's a $400 million project working with the Army Corps as well to protect the east shore of Staten Island. There's a major project for Coney Island and Seagate, all over. Because of these individuals and others, we have major plans moving now, physical movement to protect our neighborhoods. And what's being announced today will have a profound impact for the people of Manhattan, the people of Staten Island, the people of the Bronx, and it will be a perfect combination with so many other efforts that are underway. We also know we have to help those who are still suffering the effects of Sandy. And again, here in New York City, we made a pledge on construction sites and construction starts for people who need their homes built back. 42 construction starts have now begun compared to 0 on January 1st. We sent out 208 reimbursement checks to families in need compared to 0 on January 1st. This progress is moving now. This process is moving forward. And with the help of HUD, now $1 billion more available both for recovery and resiliency in this city. The reason for that is the individuals I'm standing with. Let's start with the facts and the history. We would never have gotten the Sandy bill that this city, this state, and the state of New Jersey deserved if it weren't for Senator Chuck Schumer. He made it happen with his colleagues. And thank you. Thank you to Congresswoman Velasquez. Thank you to Congresswoman Maloney. They all fought. I think we can safely say that Chuck brought a certain something to the fight that helped propel it forward. A certain panache, a certain chutzpah.
Chutzpah.
A certain fuerza.
Oh, excelente.
Sí, sí. Governor Cuomo fought from the beginning to make sure New York State got its fair share, and as I can say from my long experience with Governor Cuomo, to make sure the projects actually happened. One of his attributes I appreciate is he's not interested in abstraction, he's interested in actually getting the shovels in the ground. And so much of the progress we've made in New York State is because of the governor's leadership. We thank him for that. And then this is a little bit of a reunion, because 3 of us used to work in the same 1960s era building in Washington, D.C. Governor Cuomo, Secretary Donovan, and I. Shaun and I were young idealists. We're older idealists now. But Shaun Donovan was tasked by President Obama with taking the lead in a recovery effort for this region. While having to do his day job of running efforts all over the United States of America, he did that with tremendous energy and focus. He remembered his day job, but he also remembered where he came from. And we all appreciate that. And this package, almost $640 million for Build It Back, allowing us now to reach every individual in the Build It Back pipeline who needs help. Every family still waiting for help will be reached. And $355 million for resiliency projects to protect key areas of the city. This is exactly what we dreamed of happening. It's finally happening today. It's going to make a huge change for this city. I'm going to finish real quick, but I want to give us a sobering fact just to let you know how important this announcement is today. 400,000 New Yorkers live in the floodplain. In this city alone, 400,000 people live in the floodplain. More than any other major city in America. We are the ultimate coastal city. We are who we are because we're the ultimate coastal city. We wouldn't trade that in for anything in the world, but it requires of us a new level of preparation and resiliency. You know, I saw all over the city in the days after Sandy what people went through, what Melba went through, what so many other people went through. In Red Hook and Coney Island and Howard Beach and Canarsie and all over Staten Island, here in Lower Manhattan, the east side of Manhattan. It was such a cautionary tale of how differently we have to do things. and we're all committed, a unified front, to getting this done and getting it done fast. And the Rebuild by Design program is a crucial tool in that effort. It happened because of Shaun and because of HUD, but it also happened because of an extraordinary public-private partnership. The Rockefeller Foundation was a key player in that partnership, helping to foster collaboration and push for boldness in the plan, something we here in New York City like a lot, boldness. It's my pleasure to introduce the man who is the driving force in so much of this effort, the Vice President for Initiatives and Strategy at the Rockefeller Foundation, Zia Khan.
Thank you very much, Mayor de Blasio, for doing such a wonderful job of painting the human face of resilience, the scope of activity that's underway, and also the enormity of the challenge that we face ahead. Good morning. My name is Zia Khan, and I am Vice President at the Rockefeller Foundation, and it's a real pleasure to be here among so many outstanding partners who've all worked together to make this happen. The Rockefeller Foundation has supported a decade's worth of resilience work, beginning in New Orleans in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, where we supported a unified community development plan. Since then, we've been helping cities around the world to help build their resilience to withstand disasters and bounce back better. And that includes our hometown right here in New York City. Superstorm Sandy was unlike any storm before it. The unprecedented damage revealed the true threat that weather events pose to our communities and our cities. It marked a new era of public awareness that we must change our practices, we must change our thinking, and we must even change our way of living to address climate change and the threat of rising sea levels. We cannot simply rebuild what existed before. We need to seize the opportunity to think differently, making sure our region is resilient enough to rebound from future storms. After Superstorm Sandy, we were honored that Governor Cuomo asked the Foundation's president, Dr. Judith Rodin, to co-chair New York State's 2100 Commission. And when HUD approached us to partner with them in their work to promote resilience in the Sandy region, we were excited and ready for the challenge. Throughout the Rockefeller Foundation's work, we've seen the critical role that design plays in making or breaking a community's resilience. So it was our privilege to be the lead funder for the Rebuild by Design competition and to work closely with this group of partners. So right now you may ask, what is Rebuild by Design? Well, it's a multi-stage design competition to develop innovative but implementable solutions to the Sandy-affected region to help promote resilience. At the core of this work is the coupling together of community consultation and their insights with smart, innovative design. Last summer, Secretary Donovan launched the competition, and we received 148 applications from around the world. From that group, we selected 10 design teams to participate in this process. What followed was a comprehensive engagement process from beginning to end, meetings with 74 community and issue-based organizations and 157 government entities, walking tours through 30 neighborhoods, more than 60 community workshops, conversations, and outreach events across the region. It wasn't easy to coordinate, but this level of engagement was really what gave the fire and the life to the whole process. From all of that research and experience, the design teams developed more than 40 initial plans, from which the 10 most promising and innovative finalists were shown to the public and reviewed by an expert jury. And that brings us to today. The winning design solutions we are announcing will be implemented with federal disaster recovery grants, as well as other sources of public and private sector financing. The Rockefeller Foundation provided $3 million to help run this process, and that helped steer almost $1 billion in Sandy recovery money from HUD to projects that will meaningfully improve the resilience of our cities and communities. And we believe that's a smart use of our philanthropic dollars. This has been a fundamentally collaborative process, and so on behalf of our foundation and our president, Dr. Rodin, I want to extend our gratitude to the incredible group of partners we have worked with at every step of the way in Rebuild by Design. To Secretary Donovan, Senator Schumer, Governor Cuomo, and Mayor de Blasio, we are really fortunate to have such strong leadership at every level of government. To the design teams, thank you for your outstanding and innovative work. To our funding partners, including the Deutsche Bank Americas Foundation, the Hearst Foundation, the Cerdna Foundation, the JPB Foundation, and the New Jersey Recovery Fund, thank you for your support and collaboration. To To the Rebuild by Design team, Hank Ovink and Amy Chester, you've been a real pleasure to work with. And to my Rockefeller Foundation colleagues, Nancy Keat and Sam Carter, great work, guys. And most importantly, to the communities impacted by Sandy, thank you for your deep commitment and insight in this process. Without you, this simply would not have been possible. With that, I'm pleased to introduce the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Shaun Donovan, as he will soon be taking on an even bigger role in running the Office of Management and Budget. We are sad that a real champion for this Sandy region is leaving HUD, pending Senate confirmation, as he just mentioned.
Senator Schumer mentioned.
But as we make this funding announcement today, it can't be bad that he'll soon be in charge, pending Senate confirmation, of the whole federal budget and bring a focus to resilience across the government. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Zia, thank you so much, and I know that Judy wanted to be here today. Please give her my thanks. I still remember the day that I called her to say we were thinking about doing a competition like this, and she said, "Shaun, I'm in. I'll go talk to my board tomorrow. This is exactly what we want to be doing." And that partnership from the very beginning, her commitment, has brought us to this day. So thank you, Zia. Thank you for the leadership of the foundation. I want to come back in a moment to talk about Senator Schumer, but just let me reiterate the words that Bill de Blasio spoke, that Mayor de Blasio spoke. We literally would not be standing here today if it were not for the leadership of Senator Schumer and our entire congressional delegation. So I want to thank all of you for making this possible. Governor Cuomo, Mayor de Blasio, we have seen that leadership is truly tested in crisis. And this crisis that New York City, New York State faced has shown your true leadership. I want to thank you for long-term friendship, long-term partnership, but most importantly, as a New Yorker, for your leadership of this great city and this great state. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause as well. Let me add my thanks to all the philanthropic groups that made it possible to be here today. And I do want to say I've got a reasonably long list of thank yous because this has been such a collaborative process. So many groups have been involved. Tens of thousands of citizens have come together to participate in this process. It would not have been possible without the JPB Foundation, New Jersey Recovery Fund, CERDNA, Deutsche Bank America Fund, and the Hearst Foundation, in addition to Rockefeller. All of the partners who've played a role, from the Municipal Arts Society, the NYU Institute for Public Knowledge, the Regional Planning Association, the Van Allen Institute, and the Dutch government, who loaned us Hank Ovink. And I do want to take just a special moment to recognize Hank's leadership. And I see nodding heads around the crowd today. So many of you have come to know the Energizer, the bald Energizer bunny himself, Hank Ovink. He is not with us today because of a family health situation. He is back in the Netherlands, and it's with great sadness that he doesn't join us today. But he wanted me to communicate his great love and affection for everyone he's met through this process, and to thank you for your participation. He also wanted to make sure that I recognize, and I want to do that today, the incredible team that we've had behind him working on Rebuild by Design. Amy Chester, Marion McFadden, Holly Light, Scott Davis, and so many others at HUD who have been part of this. Thank you all for your leadership and your engagement in this remarkable process. I also have to say thank you to the more than 200 members of the 10 teams who were Rebuild by Design finalists and created world-class proposals for this competition. And I want to say to all of the finalists, keep going. Whether you're a winner here today or not, you have engaged communities, you have led new thinking, new approaches in those communities. Keep going. That's what this competition was always about, is engaging new ideas, new energy around these proposals. And I want to see these proposals keep going all across this region. As a native New Yorker, I was deeply honored when President Obama asked me to chair the Hurricane Sandy Task Force. For me, this recovery process has been deeply personal. I have friends, neighbors who lost loved ones, lost their homes, lost their businesses in the neighborhood I lived in Brooklyn for so many years. And from the beginning, our goals have been to help families to get back into their homes, but also to rebuild the region stronger and more prepared for future storms. Rising sea levels and climate change are presenting unprecedented threats to our cities, their regional ecosystems, and coastal communities across the region. We're here today because the Reese houses and this area were severely flooded by Hurricane Sandy. We're standing just a few blocks from the Con Ed substation, which flooded and caused the entire area to lose power. We created the Rebuild by Design competition because we have an obligation to make sure that this does not happen again. This competition has brought together interdisciplinary design teams. You heard 148 teams from more than 15 different countries around the world. Academics, engineers, the best water scientists in the world, all coming together to engage with local communities throughout this process. So today I'm proud to announce that HUD will allocate $355 million to New York City and $185 million to New York State to implement the following winners of the Rebuild by Design competition. And I want to ask the teams to stand as I announce the winners. New York City will receive $335 million for the BIG team's proposal for the Lower East Side. Come on. The whole team, come on. Stand up, guys. The big team's proposal will create a bridging berm at the East River Park. The proposal will protect this area, which includes 29,000 public housing apartments, 150,000 residents, as well as the Con Ed substation, from rising sea levels and future storm surges. It will also create an environmentally friendly public space that will be enjoyed by the people in this community. Thank you. Congratulations. New York City will also receive $20 million for Penn Design Olin's proposal for Hunts Point in the Bronx. The funds for the Penn Design proposal will allow continued planning and study related to protecting this region's main food source, which supplies food to over 20 million people throughout the region. New York State will receive $125 million for the Interborough team's proposal for Nassau County. All right, back up. I'm listening to the mayor. Let's go back to the Penn Design Olin team and recognize them. Please stand up. The entire team. I know lots of you are here. Some of them already standing.
Guys in yellow suede shoes.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm your road.
Your city. New York State will receive $125 million for the Interborough team's proposal for Nassau County. The proposal will protect areas around southern Nassau's north-south tributaries and transform the Mill River into a blue-green corridor that stores and filters water, provides public space, and creates room for new urban development. Congratulations. And finally, New York State will receive $60 million for the SCAPE landscape architecture proposal for Staten Island.
One person did the whole thing. What a capable person.
That's nice. Just got worse.
In the back, too. Nice. The proposal is going to create a living breakwater that will reduce wave action and erosion and lower risk from heavy storms. It also includes a plan to engage the local schools to help build resilience awareness in the community. Congratulations again to all the winners. They are all truly transformative and serve as blueprints for how we can safeguard the region and make it more environmentally and economically resilient. Implementing these proposals is morally the right thing to do. because they will save lives. But it also makes economic sense because for every dollar that we spend today on hazard mitigation, we save at least $4 the next time disaster strikes. By investing in these proposals, we're going to ensure that when the next storm comes, New York will be safer and better prepared. Thank you for all your participation. Congratulations again to the winners. And let me now introduce Senator Schumer. And I will say, whether it's on Rebuild by Design or any other element of the recovery of this great state, there is no one who has been more engaged on a day-to-day basis. He has my number on speed dial, I can assure you, not to mention every other official in the federal government working on this issue. He has been relentless in making sure that we meet the needs of every New Yorker hurt by this storm, and that we rebuild this great state even greater. Senator Schumer, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Shaun, and let me just thank you for the amazing work you have done here. When the President chose Shaun Donovan to be the head of the Sandy relief team, we knew we would really get the kind of cooperation we needed, because he's a New Yorker, but not just a New Yorker. He's smart. He understands deep issues, but he's practical as well. And it's true. I have his phone number on his speed phone memorized. I'll tell you all but the last digit. No.
For a little more funding, we won't put the number
Yes,
up.
exactly. But we talk to each other at 6 in the morning, 1 in the morning, and every time in between. And he's always been there and accessible. I also want to thank Rockefeller for really providing the inspiration for this. It's another great New York institution. We are the center of so many things in New York, and Rockefeller is the center of many of those, so thank you. And last, but certainly not least, our governor and our mayor. You can't do these things. As a legislator, my job is to set the broad parameters and try to bring money. But as was mentioned by the mayor in his description of the governor, unless you have someone who can get the things done, it doesn't make a darn bit of difference. And it is really hard to get these things done. And the mayor in the city, since he's taken over, he's taken a special interest in Sandy. It's one of the first things we talked about in his first week of the mayoralty, and I think we've straightened out a lot of the things that weren't working. And the governor has been on the case from day one, helping us pass the bill with fair money for New York, and then implementing so that, for instance, as Ed Mangano will testify, in Nassau County and in Suffolk County, just about every homeowner, about 80–90% of them have already been taken care of, and the rest will be taken care of soon. So it's a great team. Now this is what's so important here. We know there will be other storms like Sandy that hit New York. We also know that they will create huge damage. But with these projects, this rebuild by design, yes, we will have other storms, but no, the damage will not be close to as great. Amen. We are preparing for the future. We are making sure when the next Sandy hits, the damage to people, to property, and to the core of our city and state are much reduced. We know how to do it. It's just having the will to do it, and today's competition and the winners announced make that very clear. It is really important that we do the things that we have done. Sandy was devastating, and frankly, as a nation and as a region, we were unprepared. That won't happen again, plain and simple, because of what we have done here today. After Sandy, we had two options. We could rebuild exactly as things were before and be as vulnerable as we were before. Or we could rebuild in a new way, the key word now being resiliency. It's become sort of common vocabulary. Resiliency is a fancy word for meaning that we're going to do it better and learn from our mistakes. And that's what's happened. So Sandy was a great learning experience, not only for New York, but for the whole country. It taught the country that climate change is real and devastating, but it also taught us not to just sit on our hands and wait for the next storm, but to prepare for it better. So I just want to talk a little bit about each of these projects, which are so important. I was at all of these places right after Sandy, so I knew what happened. And the housing developments through this area, so many people, vulnerable people, like Melba here, were caught. And what we're going to do, and this is the nice thing about Sandy, is we're not only going to build a berm along the East River, but it's going to be beautiful parkland. So it's not only going to protect us, which these kinds of berms and parkland can do, but it's going to provide more beauty, more use of our shorefront. It fits in like a hand in a glove to the redevelopment that's occurring along the East River and along the east side. And plain and simple, I hope that we can extend it beyond 23rd Street. Visiting NYU, they had built a wall of 14 feet, way up there on 30th Street, because the highest the East River had ever crested was 11 feet. When it was 16 feet, that hospital and Hospital Row got hurt. And our next job, and I know the mayor's on board with this, and hopefully your successor will be, Shaun, is to extend this berm north of 23rd Street, because it's really important for the city of Manhattan. Hunts Point, as was mentioned, it's the center of our food distribution. From all over the country, people come to Hunts Point and the food is distributed. If we don't protect it, the damage could be huge. And we don't know how the next storm's going to hit. It might hit Long Island Sound worse than it hits the Great South Bay or the Atlantic Ocean or New York City's harbor. And so protecting Hunts Point is vital. A resilient Hunts Point means local businesses will want to stay there and not think of moving somewhere else. Really important to New York. On Staten Island, and I see our Representative Ignizio here, again, we visited it together. Huge damage. Now, the Army Corps is doing its share, and in a lot of these projects, the Army Corps does stuff. But what we're doing here in Staten Island is making sure that there is something to block the waves as they come into the lowland. The Living Breakwaters project in Tottenville is something that I've been pushing for a long time, along with the Staten Island delegation, and we are so glad that Rebuild by Design has recognized building those breakwaters to protect the south and southeast shore of Staten Island in particular. And then, as Shaun will tell you, and as Ed will tell you, a particular concern to me has been Nassau County. Because when Rebuild by Design first started, Nassau County wasn't included. Fortunately, we're good enough in the Sandy bill to put all the money for something called FIMP, not known here in New York City, but well known out on Long Island, Fire Island to Montauk Project, and build a whole huge barrier from the Suffolk-Nassau border all the way to Montauk. It'll protect that area, but what about Nassau? Now, the Army Corps was doing some things at Long Beach and at Jones Beach to build dunes and berms, but that left a lot of Nassau. I have a little map here, but I'm sure it's over there. Well, it's very interesting if you know the geography of Nassau County. There are lots of inland waterways that won't be protected even if you build a big barrier on Long Beach and at Jones Beach. And what this project does, and I bugged Shaun relentlessly, in fact, till we signed the deal at the very end. This wasn't de Blasio's doing.
You educated me.
We have to have something for Nassau, and we need a lot of money for Nassau. And this project is a beauty. It's wonderful. Because what happens is the water can go around the barrier islands and clog up many of the bays, including Hewlett Bay, including Middle Bay, including East Bay. And then it backs up into the streams and creeks that come out of those bays. Mill Creek is the biggest and longest one. With this project, what we will be able to do with sluice gates, with widening the canals and widening the bay areas, is protect countless communities like East Rockaway and Lynbrook and Rockville Center and Island Park from the next storm. Because even if the water gets around the barriers at Long Beach, and we hope it won't, we will now have protection. And again, unfinished agenda, we're doing it for Hewlett Creek and Hewlett Bay and Mill Creek, but we're going to have to do it for the areas further out in Nassau County where Freeport and many of the other communities are in Middle Bay and East Bay. But these are great things. They use the best of new science with the federal resources that we never would have had before Sandy to build us back bigger, better, stronger, more resilient. And I thank every one of the folks up here on the stage and the many others who participated to make that happen. Today is really a red-letter day. Now, it is my honor. I think Mayor de Blasio summed it up best. This guy gets the job done, period. And we've seen it. As I said, we had so many homeowners hurt in Nassau and Suffolk County. Most of them have been taken care of because the governor put together a really smart plan and stayed on top of it day by day to make sure things happen. There's going to be all kinds of resiliency on Long Island. As you know, when we wrote the Sandy bill, the mayor is in charge of the New York City areas, and the state is in charge of the other areas, in this case, mainly Nassau and Suffolk counties. And there'll be resiliency in our infrastructure. We're going to have a new sewage plant. It's going to take out care of the nitrogen. We are going to make sure that our electric grid is in better shape. All of these things happened because the governor was on top of just about every aspect of it, and it was a pleasure to provide the money to someone who is so able at making sure the money is spent well, Governor Cuomo.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. I'm going to speak quickly for two reasons. Number one, I'm from New York, and we talk fast in New York. When I was HUD secretary, I had to slow down the way I spoke when I was in other parts of the country. So that's number one. Second reason I'm going to talk fast is sunstroke. That's why. In the order of appearance, first, Mayor Bill de Blasio, he did come in. One of his top priorities was rebuilding after Sandy. And he focused, I believe correctly so, on the need at the time was helping people in their homes, helping people rebuild their homes who had gone through over a year of terrible frustration. And he's done extraordinary work. Let's give him a round of applause, Mayor Bill de Blasio. To the Rockefeller Foundation, thank you very much for your help and assistance. Today would not be possible without them. Thank you, Mr. Khan. To Mr. Secretary, Shaun Donovan. Secretary is a life title, by the way. Any title by Senate confirmation is a life title. I am still a secretary as opposed to just a mere governor. Shaun, it's funny how life works. As you heard from the mayor, myself, and Shaun Donovan all worked together at HUD during the Clinton years. Which actually turned out to be a tremendous advantage in this situation because we knew HUD and we knew each other, and it was one of the few lights in the middle of a very dark situation. But we were fortunate that Shaun was a New Yorker. He had been commissioner here in New York City, and he was HUD secretary, and then he was put in charge of the overall effort. We couldn't have had a better friend. We couldn't have had a more competent friend. He got a big promotion. He's now going to be head of OMB, Office of Management and Budget, which is a very, very big deal.
Pending Senate confirmation.
Pending Senate confirmation, which we're sure is going to be just a walk in the park. Provided Senator Schumer wants it to be a walk in the park. We're happy for Shaun. We're a little sad for ourselves because he was so good to us at HUD. He'll be good to us at OMB. But he's a great public servant, a great friend to New York. Let's give him a round of applause, Shaun Donovan.
Thanks, Andrew.
And then, as you heard, none of this happens without one thing called the money. We have a lot of love, but sometimes it's about the money. And today it was about the money. And the advantage we had was a tremendous supplemental appropriation that funded the Sandy needs, and that's what HUD administered. And Senator Schumer led our congressional delegation on getting the supplemental, and we didn't make it easy for them, I want you to know. When we were talking about the original estimates of what the supplemental would have to be, we were talking about $10 billion, we were talking about $20 billion. When we sat down at the table with New Jersey, it turned out the number was going to be $60 billion. One of the greatest, largest supplemental appropriations ever. So it was a very big undertaking for the congressional delegation, but they literally brought home the bacon. Let's give Senator Schumer and the congressional delegation, Carolyn Maloney, Nydia Velasquez, thank you very much. And I'd also like to recognize an individual who did a fantastic job. I was out there with him night and day, day after day. County Executive Ed Mangano from Nassau County. I want to thank him. It is very simple. Nothing is the same after Hurricane Sandy. And you know what? Nothing should be the same after Hurricane Sandy. Because if it is, we miss the point. Hurricane Sandy brought home the reality that we are dealing with an extreme weather pattern that we have just not seen before. And not to recognize it, to deny it, would be a fool's errand. I've been governor about 3.5 years, 9 federally declared disasters in 3.5 years. My father was governor for 12 years. He had less than a handful. There is something that has changed with the weather pattern. 100-year floods now happen every 3 years. And the pattern is the same over and over and over. And all those federally declared disasters, I hear the same thing everywhere all across the state. This has never happened before. I've lived in this house for 50 years. We've never seen water. I've never seen that river overflow. This is a place that we have gone to that we've not been to before. A new reality, call it the new normal, call it whatever you want. But it is something we must be prepared for. Now, the mayor's exactly right. What makes New York, New York? What makes Nassau, Nassau, and Suffolk, Suffolk? And the Mid-Hudson, the Mid-Hudson? We're close to the water. That's our advantage. New York, one of the greatest natural harbors on the planet. Beautiful Nassau, on the water on both sides. Ocean on one side, the bay on the other. Suffolk, the same thing. Beautiful Hudson River going up the Mid-Hudson. That's our strength, yes. It's also your weakness in terms of extreme weather. That's what we're learning, and that's what we're working through. And many of our assumptions were wrong. Well, we know better, and we're going to tame Mother Nature. Oh, you think so, huh? No. At the end of the day, Mother Nature wins. So we have to look at this space, this physical space, in a different way. Revisit where we build and how we build. On Staten Island, with Councilman Ignizio, we're literally buying homes and moving homes that were on the waterfront, that are too close to the waterfront, and we're actually relocating those homes. How we build, the architecture of how we build. You're going to see homes on stilts. And it's not Louisiana, and it's not Texas, and it's not the Southeast. We're going to build homes on stilts here in New York State. Places like Manhattan that never flooded. Now we have to figure out how to seal the subway. They talk about the brilliance of New York and city, Manhattan, how high we build. The engineering marvel is how deep we build. Some parts of Manhattan go down 15 stories. You have a flood over the top of Manhattan. You flood 15 stories down. You don't even have the capacity to pump that out. Every subway opening now becomes a threat. Every grate on the street now becomes a threat. How do you close the tunnels? We've never been here before. And part of it literally is going to be going back to Mother Nature and going back to what was and replacing and repairing what we did. We're planting oyster beds off Staten Island. Just think of it. Oyster beds. We spent decades devastating the oyster beds. Now we're going back, rebuilding oyster beds because they were Mother Nature's intelligence of a natural barrier. Jamaica Bay, restoring marshes that we destroyed. Putting back berms that we brought down because they blocked our view. Yes, but they also stopped the water. That's what today is all about. And reimagining and rethinking. And congratulations to the winners, because this is a place that nobody's gone to before. This is one of those most expansive engineering feats, because it's the exact opposite mentality we've been using for so many years. And it is essential that we learn the lesson and we take this moment in history and move forward with that lesson in hand. It's not about building back. It's about building back better than ever before. And that is our challenge as New Yorkers. Challenge of every generation is, how do you leave this place a better place than you found it? And our challenge is going to be, after what we've learned, how do we rebuild New York to make it stronger, more resilient, more able to deal with these emergencies and extreme weather than ever before. With the brain power you have, with these winners, with this coalition of government working together, there's nothing we can't do. It's my honor to be part of it. Thank you, and God bless you.
So to our friends in the media, we will take questions on topic only. I'll be doing a separate avail on other topics thereafter, but on topic only here. And since we were able to acknowledge some of the folks here, let me just take a quick moment to acknowledge some of the others. Our members of City Council are here. I want to thank them for all their support in all of these efforts. You heard Vinny Ignazio, who is applauding the whole way through for Staten Island. Margaret Chin, Rosie Mendez. I think you represent this very place, yes?
He does.
Who represents the Reese houses. I also want to thank, we in the city, so much of the work we're doing on resiliency is led by the team we put together. I want to thank Bill Goldstein, who's here. I want to thank Dan Zarilli and Amy Peterson. They are doing an extraordinary job. And finally, this location reminds us so much of the work that we have to do in the Housing Authority. Senator Schumer and Governor Cuomo have been very focused on this effort with us to get the generators out of harm's way, to do the work building by building to protect the Housing Authority. There's a lot more to come. I want to thank the chair of the New York City Housing Authority, and Senator Schumer, you'll say this along with me, Shola Olatoye.
Oh, yes, Olatoye.
There we go. Thank you, Shola. Want to thank Cecil House, the general manager of NYCHA, and I see we've been joined by the Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer. Thank you for all your support for these initiatives. So to our friends in the media, you've got a wonderful lineup here. Direct your questions as you wish. Go.
I have a question for Mr. Secretary. Obviously, you couldn't pick every one of these finalists, but a couple of boroughs not in the mix. And I'm wondering if you feel confident that the resiliency efforts that are being taken by other jurisdictions suffice to keep away the floodwaters in this era of rising seas.
So let's be clear. As you've heard, we're living in a different world. And beyond what was hit and destroyed by Sandy, there's tens of billions of dollars of infrastructure throughout the region that we need to think differently about. So is what we're announcing today going to take care of every piece of infrastructure, make us the resilient region that we need to be just through the announcement today? No. But what we are doing is, through this effort, to create new models. And one of the things that we were very focused on throughout the whole competition is to pick things that were replicable. These oyster beds that you heard about, FEMA is watching this project very closely, thinking about not just whether it could be repeated throughout the region, but in Florida and many other places that are susceptible. The kind of approach that we're taking here, we're actually speaking to insurance companies who are looking at this to say, well, if we can bring the insurance costs down for every building in the region, in the place that's protected, we could actually use those savings and invest them into building much more infrastructure like this. So the models that we're talking about here were specifically designed to be replicable, to bring not just more government funding, but to bring private sector funding as well. And when you combine that with the smart things that the governor, the mayor are doing to look at our energy infrastructure, to look at protecting other parts of the city through the investments that they're going to be making and other parts of the state, I believe you will see a region that is prepared for the next storm when we have something like Sandy happen again.
Let me just say one more thing, because I know you were probably saying, what about Brooklyn and Queens, a place that Cuomo, de Blasio, and Schumer seem to care about quite a bit. This is not the only money for resiliency. There's FEMA money and there's Army Corps money, both of which are being spent in Brooklyn and Queens as well as in the other boroughs. These were the Rebuild by Design projects that won. They're very needed, but that doesn't mean the other boroughs are being neglected.
Yeah. To put it in an exclamation point, this is several $100 million worth of projects that we're discussing today. overall, we're doing billions and billions, and almost every project has a resiliency component to it. So at the end of the day, the entire affected area is going to have adequate resiliency work.
When will this resiliency be completed? And when will the majority of build-it-back houses be rebuilt?
So on Build It Back, as we've said, we're going to have 500 construction starts by Labor Day, and we're going to have 500 reimbursement checks separate for other families by Labor Day. And then we're going to continue relentlessly from that point on. I mean, the bottom line is this funding. Again, the Rebuild by Design is one piece. The other funding that we announced last week from the federal government allows us to reach each and every homeowner in need. So right now it is about getting those first commitments done and then just continuing from there until everyone is reached. We have not yet put out a final timetable for when every last person will be reached, but it is our commitment to reach every last person. In terms of the kinds of projects we're talking about here, I know my colleagues can fill in some of the blank too. But, you know, our goal here, remember, some of these projects, of course, take very extensive design. They're very sensitive and complicated projects. But we want to get that up and running immediately. We want to get these in place over the next few years. It's hard to give you a final date on that, but I certainly think in the next 4 or 5 years you're going to see the physical manifestation of everything we're talking about here. And then, as Senator Schumer said, as I indicated at the beginning, all the other projects we're doing right now with the Army Corps, with FEMA, the Rockaways, Coney Island, the East Shore, Staten Island, all that is progressing simultaneously. So I think you're going to see over 4 or 5 years a hugely different physical reality in this city. You want to add?
Nope.
Okay. Sir.
Thank you. This is a follow-up question for Secretary Donovan, if I may. A couple months ago, when you were testifying before Senator Schumer's committee on answering Senator Schumer's questions, you said that the reason why it was taking a long time to do Build It Back was because of the project's complexity, the program design and implementation. And as HUD Secretary, you had some role, I imagine, in approving that program. Did you see, when you approved this program, that it would take as long as it has?
We have worked very closely with Mayor de Blasio to make changes to the program, to streamline it, and to allow decisions to move faster. Ultimately, we can provide that kind of technical assistance, but it is really the mayor and his team who had to dig in, make a set of changes, and accelerate this. And so I want to recognize, since the first day he was on the job, the mayor was focused on this, and we've had almost daily calls with his team to try to find ways to cut red tape, to accelerate this. But ultimately, it's been the mayor and his leadership that has allowed this process to begin to move faster.
Just follow up.
Can we do one last question, please?
Go ahead. Follow up, and then Jillian. Go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up. I was really asking about the original program approval a year ago under the previous mayor.
Yeah, so what we do at HUD is we approve funding for programs. We don't necessarily approve specific program elements or designs. So we'd be happy to follow up with you to talk more specifically about sort of what we reviewed and what we approved in terms of the program. But again, our job is to provide the funding, to make sure that it's spent on the right things, and then to work closely with grantees to bring them best practices from other parts of the country, to cut red tape where the federal government's getting in the way, and that's what we've done.
Jillian.
So this is sort of another follow-up. Senator Schumer, you mentioned that homeowners in Nassau and Suffolk County have largely been helped at this point. That's not quite the case here in New York City. I just want to get your thoughts, and perhaps Secretary Donovan's thoughts as well, on why it's been a little bit slower in New York City to get the money out the gate to homeowners. And what do you think of this?
Yeah, there are different priorities, and there's so much to do. There's infrastructure. New York City had the subway problems and all of the others. There's all of the cleanup costs and everything else. And so the way it was ordered, the state put the homeowners at the very beginning, the city put them further back, and when Mayor de Blasio came in, we talked, and he decided to accelerate and put the homeowners at the top of the list. Until December 31st, I don't think a single homeowner had actually gotten any money. Now you're going to see that money flowing, and as a result of the negotiations the three of us had over over the last few weeks on this Tranche 3, every homeowner will be taken care of in New York City as well. I know they've been waiting a long time, much too long in my opinion. I didn't like the prioritization the way it was. Homeowners, when we crafted the Sandy bill, we wanted homeowners to be first, and with Mayor de Blasio, that's what's happening now in New York City.
Okay, thanks, everyone.